Good evening. We'll start out today's meeting with Commissioner Lautner, I think is going to do the pledge of allegiance.
I think probably. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
A reminder to make sure that your microphone, the red light is on, please. Commissioner O'Rourke.
Present.
Commissioner Rexroth.
Present.
Chairman Wessel.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross. Present. Commissioner Alguier. Here. Commissioner Lautner. Present. All present.
Okay, we have two sets of board minutes. Do I have a motion for one or both?
Move to approve the minutes for ready to start the meetings for both meetings as presented.
Support.
Okay, all those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved 6-0. Now we are going to take a look at the agenda. Do we have any late additions or do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda approved. Now we have our administrator update.
I'm gonna save my update till after we heard from our guests, and I've been given the privilege of introducing them both. About a year ago, I think it's a little bit more than a year ago, I had in another role, I was at a meeting that was being put together by the Community Foundation. And at that meeting, Representative Kofia and Senator DeMoose were in there, explaining about how their last session had gone and everything they were working on. And if there's one thing that I came away with so impressed with, I didn't hear anything about the politics. Well, those Republicans or those Democrats, they stayed very focused on how they were crossing the aisle, working with each other to get what was needed to be gotten up here in Northern Michigan. And I was so impressed with that. I've had to, and I probably didn't say it to them, and I want to say it to them now because I don't think they probably have changed their stripes that much. I've had the privilege to work with Ms. Kofia and when she was a county commissioner. She helped quite a bit to help me to get through with the commission to get our senior center rebuilt and restarted again. She was a great resource. And so I am very proud to be able to introduce you to your representative, Betsy Kofia. So they're going to go separately. So thank you, Betsy. Or unless John wants to come up here, whatever, it's up to you guys. And the other one is John DeMoose. As you know, he is your senator. The only negative about him is he lives up in someplace called Petoskey or something.
Yeah.
But
Little.
Charlotte, somewhere up over there.
We used to live here. We used to live.
But he's, I know he's married, he's come to talk to me on several occasions, but he cares about Northern Michigan. And he shared with me, kind of get some of his colleagues a little riled up because he's trying to get done what we need done up here, so that's great. So I'll turn it over to you guys and have y'all want to do this, so.
Fantastic.
Well, I'll let Betsy start since she was going to go ahead anyways, but we can play off of one another afterwards. So.
Sure. So I want to give actually the senator props because he gets the prize for driving the farthest. I think he came down straight from Harbor Springs.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to the Leelanau County Commission for the opportunity to be back in front of you to just give a report and update. I think the last time I was here was December-ish, sometime toward the end of the year, and did a mid-year report last year. So I'm just going to dive in if it's okay, Senator. Just a progress report, and then we can I want to give you space to share yours, and then we can dialogue a bit if that feels right. So. Starting, of course, with a thank you to each of you. Again, I had the opportunity to serve 2 terms in the county commission. It is great, Administrator Lewis, to see that senior center, that new senior center finally going up along the Bay Shore. That was many, many years in the making down in Traverse City. But thank you for your service. And I am really happy to have an opportunity in my first term as state rep for this district to work, yes, across the aisle wherever possible to deliver for our constituents. For those who may not remember the bounds of our districts, because of course all the lines changed a year or two ago, I have the privilege of representing half of Grand Traverse County, all of Leelanau County. You're my only whole county, so you're easy to remember when I explain to people. And then one corner of Benzie County, the Platte Elmira Township area, so Lake Ann. And so since I last presented, a couple of some of the more major pieces of legislation that we saw come through include an extenuation of something that I told you about last year. For the first time in the school aid fund budget, we did implement universal breakfast and lunch for all school children. And that at a time when grocery bills are, pretty high for families, including many middle-class families, it's really been a struggle. That is saving families $850 approximately per child in grocery bills per year. And that was extended. That's what I wanted to share with you. That has continued into this year's budget. And there is legislation that two former teachers, Representative Jamie Churches, who's a colleague of mine, and Senator Pohanke, who I know is a colleague of
Which I
senators.
co-sponsored, yep.
You co-sponsored a bill that will make that permanent. Universal breakfast and lunch for school children. So that made it into this year's budget. Another piece, just as an update, I won't belabor it because I shared about it last year, but in this year's budget, we were able to get a continuation of the rural school bus transportation categorical. That was something, that was my first standalone policy bill, really bringing funding and an equity formula for all of our rural school districts that are spending 10 to 15% of their general fund budget just before the kid even gets in the classroom, because we have such massive bus routes and gas was very expensive. And downstate school districts that are more dense didn't, they weren't having to spend that kind of money into their transportation budget. So we got an equity formula in, and I was watching that one like a hawk this year. It stayed in, and another 125 million specifically for school districts for a per pupil per mile. So I'm very happy to see that remain and hope to see that really forever remain. We have a little bit more work to do to get to be total parity, but that was a big step in the right direction. Another two things I want to mention just sort of broadly, and then I'm going to drill down on some of the bills that I have personally sponsored that are really key to the district, I think. There have been some rumblings at the federal level of a possible repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And that has been something that has been successfully implemented in Michigan and expanded healthcare access to millions of Michiganders. So in the legislature, we took the power that we do have to codify the ACA in state law, so that insurance companies, regardless of what might happen at the national level in the future, insurance companies in the state of Michigan will still be required to cover you till you're 26, to not treat being female as a pre-existing condition, many of the things that the ACA, those protections and those coverage of basic healthcare services. So we codified that in Michigan law. It will remain regardless of national. And then finally, from sort of big picture legislative moves, Michigan was the only state out of all 50 states to have a law in place shielding large pharmaceutical and drug companies from being sued by constituents if they were killed, or their families could sue if they were killed or physically harmed by the pharmaceutical. And we actually voted, this was a Senator Irwin bill. We actually became the final state to remove that barrier. We eliminated drug company immunity by state law. So we repealed that. So individuals do have legal recourse in those situations. So finally, we're no longer one of 50 states to shield drug companies from liability. So looking down to some of my work since I was with you last, I have sponsored or co-sponsored 297 bills and resolutions. I've taken over 1,000 meetings with constituents and stakeholders, and we have helped to date over 6,800 constituents with casework in state government. So that's anything from businesses trying to get figure out the liquor license process if there's a delay, or EGLE permitting, or housing needs. We've had some folks with really tricky issues with DHHS and Medicaid. And so that individual constituent casework, that is kind of where we're at by the numbers currently this session. And we've had 42 legislative coffee hours. Thank you for allowing me to host my coffee hours here at the Leelanau Gov Center. I've appreciated the participation over the last year and a half. We have done a couple of town halls. We did a town hall with the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, and then a teletown hall, which was kind of an interesting format with the governor herself. And then the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, and I have done some work together as well in district. Bills. 7 of my sponsored bills, I'm very proud to say, passed the House of Representatives, including 3 bills signed into law, which I told you about last year. One was banning child marriage. You voted for that, as I recall. Expanding domestic violence resources and sexual violence resources to our 12 federally recognized tribes that had the support of the Grand Traverse Band. And then the final one that the governor has signed into law of my bills promotes democratic participation for young voters, and it expands pre-registration to vote. They can't vote until they're 18, but to 16 and 17-year-olds. So all 3 of those bills have been signed into law. Bills that I'm a sponsor of that they've gotten through the House, and John, you're up because they're in the Senate now. The first one is part of a bipartisan set of bills, and this, I want to give a lot of credit to my colleague, Rep. John Roth, who represents part of Grand Traverse County. These were reintroductions of bills, and he invited me to be one of the sponsors. But essentially, his bill, House Bill 4313, seeks to allow small business summer resorts like Neotawanta Inn, you might recall, down on Old Mission, just allowing them to modernize their operations and transition to become a nonprofit, and allowing those often family-owned small summer resorts to stay in business with a more modern model. And so again, Rep. Roth did the heavy lifting on this. I appreciate him inviting me to be on the package, and it is currently in the Senate. The second one, this was my bill. Cherry Capital Airport, I know that we share from Leelanau and Grand Traverse have the Airport Authority Board, and Leelanau has membership on that board. Cherry Capital Airport came to me and pointed out that under the chapter of the Aeronautics Code that they are organized under, stay with me here, this is super exciting. The chapter of the Aeronautics Code that they're organized under is different than all the other airports in the state, except Gerald Ford and Grand Rapids. And essentially, the Aeronautics Code and current state law, they are prohibited from expanding how much they will put into their employee healthcare benefits. They are looking to try to improve, talent attraction and retention, and they want to be able to pay for 100% of their employees' healthcare, which is a great thing. But weirdly enough, under the Aeronautics Code that they're organized under, they needed a change to state statute to allow them to do like all the other airports and actually pay for all of their employee healthcare. So my bill does that, put simply. It will allow that to occur. That bill has made it through the House. I think that might have even been unanimous, but it is up in the Senate, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a hearing yet this year and hopefully get that done. I have another bill that would allow MSHDA. Housing is a huge issue. I have a bill that's in a larger package that would allow MSHDA to hold its debt and only sell it when market conditions are more favorable for cancellation, rather than currently under statute, they are required to immediately sell their debt. So if this bill, and it made it through the House, it was pretty broad bipartisan support. I don't know if it was fully, unanimous, but pretty strong. If we get this through the Senate and the governor signs it, this would free up, they would save millions of dollars. They would be able to earn millions of dollars, and that will help them in addressing some of our affordable housing goals. And then finally, House Bill 5047 is my bill. It's part of a larger package. And if you're familiar with the guardianship issue, we have a lot of issues with guardians and conservators in Michigan. So many of them are doing a great job. They're doing the best they can to care for vulnerable seniors and adults, but we do have abuses that occur. Mm-hmm. Over 70,000, there've been some great reports on this, over 70,000 vulnerable adults per year in Michigan experience unfortunately, financial or other types of abuse at the hands of their guardians or conservators. Things like not being allowed to see your family, things like the guardian getting, the courts award them guardianship, and they immediately take all of the person's belongings, dump it in a dumpster, and put the house on the market without any consent of that person, that vulnerable person. So this is something that has been a problem for a long time. Decades, we have had recommendations to take meaningful action, and my bill would actually establish the Office of State Guardian, which would provide resources to guardians and conservators, training and support, but also have an enforcement component and actually have a clearer, right now it's a very scattershot way of dealing with these abuses across the state. This would actually have a cohesive investigation enforcement mechanism where there is unfortunately abuse and neglect of people under guardian or conservatorship. So again, happy to say all 4 of my bills did receive strong bipartisan support when they got voted out of the House, and I'm optimistic about their chances in the Senate in the coming months. I'm almost done.
Take your time.
And you're up. I'm just going fast because I have a lot to say since the last time I was here. So I'm also happy to say, and John and I spoke on the way up here, he'll probably get into this more, but housing continues to be a major issue in our region, access to housing. And we were both contacted by the superintendent of Glen Lake Schools several months ago, pointing a couple things out. One, that Glen Lake Schools has a cliff. Half of their teachers can retire in the next 5 years, half. And the superintendent, he pointed out to us that he said, look, we pay pretty well for starting wages for teachers, but to give you some context, he moved up here from Kalamazoo a few years ago to take the job. And he said, I couldn't find a house in Leelanau County on a superintendent's salary. We have a real problem here. So, he kind of pitched an idea to us. They have identified some state-owned property in Leelanau County near Glen Lake Schools, and they have already talked to the local units of government. If we can get a statute changed around how this state-owned property is allowed to be used, we want to actually change the law to allow it to put housing as an allowable use. And the plan would be to develop educator housing for support staff and teachers for Glen Lake Schools, essentially. So I can, certainly let the senator go into that in more detail, but our teams have been working together for the last several months, and we're in the process of getting ready to introduce twin bills in the House and the Senate, and we'll both work them. We can race to see if we can get it done, get it across the finish line first. But this would not only help, with the Glen Lake Schools, but it would change the law so that state-owned property across the state, there are other areas in my district and across the state that are dealing with some of these challenges, more flexibility for use of land to address this need. So I will leave the rest for you to speak to in a minute. There's a whole bunch of stuff about the budget, a few projects that we got in this year's budget that are key for the 103rd. The senator and I worked closely together on educator housing in Grand Traverse County, and we got $5 million in the budget this year to help build some housing down there. They're dealing with very similar issues. Another one that is specific to Leelanau County, we got $1 million in the budget for a water main extension in Bingham Township, represents Bingham Township in Leelanau County. And then one that serves all 3 of my counties, $3.2 million to expand the program of all-inclusive care for the elder, the PACE program, to support that program. So $3.2 million specifically for our region on that. I will send you, I have a whole list of some of the key items that came out of this year's budget that I think are particularly of interest to our region, but I won't bore you by going through all of them right this moment. I'll send them to you. So with that, that's just a little bit of a synopsis of some of the constituent work, the bills, and some of the key budget priorities that I've been excited to be a part of moving over my first year and a half on the job. So thanks, John, you're up.
Okay. I'll probably talk a little bit more about process, and you all understand this, and I wish more people understood that this isn't, we play politics to get where we are, but the job is to govern. It's not to play politics. And most of that, as you all know full well, is relatively boring stuff. I mean, this is routine stuff, and you got to do it. And it's not stuff that gets your base fired up. It's not stuff you necessarily even post about. Most of the bills, I wouldn't even bore you going through most of the bills we do. And thank God that works like that.
It's okay,
but,
I did.
Yeah, but as we go into an election year, I mean, look for people, I don't care who they are, who want to govern, who understand these type of things. And, I'll tell you, for instance, one of the bills that I got passed this year, and it was signed into law, was literally defining what a sterile area of an airport is. Everybody in here knows you can't take a gun past security. But our Michigan law defined what it meant to be past security by saying, look at federal regulations SR 7521. Federal regulation SR 7521 was redefined to be about drone legislation. So our law made no sense. A prosecutor called me and said, John, there's a problem. We might not be able to prosecute if there is a case of this happening, because most of this actually happens at the state level or the local level, not at the federal level. And that's something we had to fix. And you wouldn't believe how long it took to get that through, but it was done. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And a lot of our job, Betsy gets this too, is sort of just talking to people and working things out. There was a big problem locally related to the air show, where the airport had some concerns about this, and the cheering festival was really wanted this. And so, you know, I made some calls and talked to Kevin Klein, who's a good guy, and said, Kevin, you know, I'm not going to do something public, but everybody loves this air show. It's the coolest thing happening in Northern Michigan. You gotta, and you know what? They were able to do it. It wasn't a legislative solution, but we have a role to play in bringing people together and things. I'll give you an update on, and some of it's kind of crazy how this happens. We just went through budget cycle, okay? And I watched the people, and again, this is what I'm cautious of on both sides of the aisle. Both sides are guilty, my side as well, of just playing politics. And it is frustrating to no end. And I was watching this with our school funding this year. And for 6 months, I was listening to our leadership in my party. And I know things were going on the other side. I'm just not privy to the behind the scenes discussion on your side. Yeah. But these guys were playing politics, and they were drawing a line in the stand that they would never be able to fix. You just knew from politics. So it was basically trying to be a pain in the neck. And I finally decided right before the budget was passed, you know what? I love our schools. Our schools, they're not perfect, but they do good work. And every year, their number one outcry to us is, what are we going to get the budget on time? We got to make our plans. Are you going to support the budget and all this stuff? So I finally said, you know what? I supported it last year and gave it immediate effect. I'm going to do that this year. And I'm all ready to just go at it, no matter what arrows I take from my own leadership in my party. And the next day I go into the office on the day we're going to start considering these things, Tuesday morning, and all of our superintendents are there. And I said, guys, want you to know I'm standing up to my caucus and I'm going to vote yes on this school bill. They said, no, don't do it. And it was the craziest set of negotiations. And I mean, this went on literally till 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Those guys all sat with me, all the Grand people from throughout our district stayed in the Senate chamber till 5 a.m. while we were trying to negotiate something, because this is the first time in like 20 years where the foundation allowance hasn't been increased at all, not a dime. And also there were some problems in there. They cut out 92% of the funding for mental health and school resource officers and these type of things, which is really bad. Now, recognizing Betsy is still, we were talking on the way over, she was in an impossible situation. If she wanted to, I could vote no, and I could fight this thing and try to negotiate and get something better. Betsy would be excommunicated from her party if she did. So we needed her to stay where she was. But we're working on some fixes to make this better for our schools. But it's a good 1-2 punch. And I'll tell you that it's been interesting how we've sort of fallen into this. Again, this is not a political body, but you can't not take into consideration just the makeup in Lansing right now, that you've got an interesting combination. You've got a Democratic representative who the majority party desperately wants to keep, and they're going to give her things as a result. You've got a Republican who's willing to cross over, and I'm one of the few who's willing to work with him. So they're going to listen to me. And so you've got a sound team down there right now. It's kind of fun watching this stuff play out. We were able to get some wins in the budget. Betsy mentioned the fish path. This was something that was really, I was passionate about, and wanted $7 million because it's a great complement to the Freshwater Research Center that we got funded last year. Bottom line is, if there's a place in the world that should be known for fresh water, anything to do with freshwater research, innovation, any of that. It should be right here. There isn't another place on earth that should be the center for this. And so I kind of saw this as part of building this long-term idea that if people want to study freshwater in any way, shape, or form, they should come to this area in the world. And this was another step in that right direction. Rep. Kofia mentioned the school lunch and breakfast program. And this is something that's funny because, you have to back up sometimes and not just go with your gut instinct on ideology. You can't make all your decisions on it, because the bottom line is this is something we did last year, and universally people love this. And the bottom line is that what attracted me to the whole thing originally in last year's budget, and I did co-sponsor a bill to make this thing permanent. And what drew me to it is we spend so much on education. We spend on transportation, we spend to keep the heat on at school, we spend for textbooks, we spend for teachers, we spend for facility, we spend for everything. And every dime of that is wasted on that one kid who goes to school and is hungry or is ashamed to have to go up and get free lunch, ask for a free lunch. And I saw this myself with our little guy who's 10. When he was in kindergarten, I went and was eating lunch at his school. And I was so impressed with the teacher who came up to this little boy across the table and said, whispered in his ears, he said, now there's another box lunch for you back there. I want you to go back and you take that home. She's whispering to him, but I was sitting right here, and that's your food for tonight. I want you to eat that. And that's so heartbreaking to me. I mean, to think that there's a kid, it's as heartbreaking to think that it's equally as heartbreaking to think he would go hungry as it is to think he'd be ashamed of himself and feel like some sort of second-class student. Now, here's the deal where the ideology, you really think about it, come in. I was arguing with my own caucus about this, and like, John, just free, you want to hand out free lunches to millionaires. Well, if a couple millionaires get a free lunch, to make this kid not feel like a second-class student, that's worth it to me. But even more, look at it this way. We're not going to get a lot of tax cuts that we want as Republicans over the next few years. So this is a way to actually return hard dollars into the pockets of hardworking taxpayers in a different form, because it saves $850 a year per kid. I mean, that's in my mind a great solution that everybody can be happy about, even if they're happy about it for different reasons. Who cares? That's how solutions are founded. Now, a couple more boring bills we've worked on. One I know you're all concerned about is this, which affects you. And we got Paige Sykes brought this up for about the need to have a little bit more control over speed limits here. And they got House Bill 4012 passed through the House, which we're still working on right now, figuring out how you implement this. But this allows you to go below the 85% of the speed limit zone. You know how this works, and have a little bit more local control over local speed limits when there's extenuating circumstances. The ultimate version of that is the bill I just got passed and signed into law, which was my bill for Mackinac Island. And Mackinac Island, M185 is that road that goes the 8.2 mile beautiful bike ride that goes around the island. And that's a state highway. And oddly enough, because it's a state highway, they can't change the speed limit or set a speed limit on Mackinac Island. And the default in parts of that was 55 miles an hour. And it never mattered before until there was these electric bikes, some of which can go 30 or 40 miles an hour. And so now you've got kids like on training wheels and people walking, and one guy who doesn't care is racing by at 30 miles an hour. So we got this through, and that's the ultimate thing. Ultimately, we'd have more local control for all this stuff, but by that's why we need the bills 4012 and what we just passed for Mackinac Island.
How many times did you have to come over and whip votes over here? There was
there was a lot of drama in the Senate too. I don't know why. I mean, our job, one of the biggest things I feel like our job is in Lansing is to keep our hands out of everything. And we've got 3 bills. One of them I know you and I are on a different page on was the solar siting bill. Okay. That's fine. But there where state is sort of taking over the decisions on that. But you've got 2 more that we're in lockstep on that are the exact same argument that are coming down the pike. One on our aggregates, where the state wants to make sure you guys don't get a say in that, that if they want to put in an aggregate mine and meet certain qualifications, they can do it. And the other one's short-term rentals. And the bottom line is, I feel like our job is to keep their filthy hands out of it, let you guys do your job. And the way I've always felt, the reason is if you get it wrong in Leelanau County, you can fix it and you pay the price for it. I mean, I talked to, when we were debating this last term, and I got sideways last year, I won't get into it, but I was talking to our city manager in Harbor Springs, and he was telling me this is the worst issue for us. We get Group A comes in and they are raising hell because they want to crack down on short-term rentals, and so we do what they say, and then the Group B comes in and they own all these things and they go berserk, and so we loosen back up. Then the first group comes in, and I just chuckled because I said, Victor, that's the way it's supposed to work, because they can come into you and get a reasonable chance of having somebody listen to them. If we make this state law where you can't touch it locally, nobody has a chance of changing it. And not only that, Victor, if you get it wrong and you clamp down too much, everybody's going to go to Petoskey. Or if you guys get it wrong, everybody's going to go somewhere else in Grand Traverse County. And then your people are going to say, hey, or your businesses are going to come and say, hey, what happened to all our businesses? So you can tweak these things. You have your hand on the pulse a lot more than what they do down in Lansing. And this is a theme we come up against over and over again. Let me just see if there was a few more things I wanted to mention, but those were sort of the big ones. I'm proud of some of the work we've done this year. One of them was I was driving, listening to, and it wouldn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that AOC is not my favorite person on earth. But I was driving to Lansing one day, listening to an article on from Rolling Stone about her being the victim of deep fake AI generated pornography and the images she had to see of herself out there. And this is horrible stuff, and nobody should go through that. There are people, it's men and women, but predominantly women who are the victims of this. And there's people who are killing themselves over the humiliation of this, somebody making a fake pornography video and putting it out there. We just banned it in the House. And I immediately said, I want a bill banning this. And I found out that Rep. Cernoglu had this in the House. So I called her, she and I are working on an op-ed in favor of it right now. But I called her and said, look, anything I can do in the Senate, I'm all in on it. But I don't think it's going to have any problem passing the House, because passing the Senate, passed the House 108-2. And so we're standing up against some of these things. Rep. Kofia mentioned the child marriage. And one of the arguments against banning this was, well, what about the two 16-year-olds who are in love? This isn't what this is about. This is about the people, we hear about human trafficking all the time. This is about the people, the parents who are totally lost, who sort of farm their kid out at 14 to a 30-year-old man. This is sickening. And this is something we can all agree upon. I mean, it violates every moral fiber in my being, just as it would in Rep. Kofia's building. So I feel like we're making progress on some of those things. Here's another example of something, though, that's kind of interesting. You know, when you're in the minority, it's a different ballgame. You know, we don't run the joint. And so there will be a different agenda if we are in the majority sometime. But my job is to do the best I can for our district. And here's a great example of how things can actually work. And again, it should restore confidence. This has really restored confidence to me a lot, that this isn't just a bunch of screaming and yelling, that there are people who want to do the right thing. There's a senator who I just think the world of, Stephanie Chang, and she is a Democrat from Detroit. She is so conscientious in the work she does. And I just really appreciate how she does work. She came in and testified on this water affordability package. And this is her package to do similar to what we have for heat in the state. There's not such a thing. It won't affect most of us because most of us are in wells, but this is city, and I begged her, don't touch the wells. I'll get to that in a second. But she, this is to create a fund to help people who can't pay their water bills. And they had somebody testify about a family of 5, and all 5 of them use the bathroom, and the 5th one flushes because they can't afford their water bill. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. This should keep all of us awake at night, that there are people in our state sort of under our charge, and we're allowing this to go on. But the problem is her bill doesn't really work very well up here. First of all, she was going for wells, and she was gonna take, there's this perception that a lot of us have up here, especially in different parts of my district, like I represent the Eastern Upper Peninsula as well. And there's this perception that all of our money goes to help problems down in Detroit and southeastern Michigan, that we just pay into this. And it's actually not always true. I mean, with road funding, a lot of the times it works the other way because of Act 51, which we can't let them change. Everybody wants to change that, but we need that for our road funding. But the way Stephanie did this was just plain beautiful. She said, I tried to explain to her what Sault Ste. Marie especially reacted harshly against this. And I said, I tried to explain it to her. She said, would it help? I'd really like to know what they have to say. So we set up a Zoom that lasted well over an hour with all of their city managers and their head of finance there, the head of the water department. They got to express all of their concerns. And she really listened to that. And one of the things is I'm going to introduce to her, she's going to allow me to introduce the substitute, which it will make it so that the money at least stays regionally. We're not going to get all we want, but at least we know it's staying regionally. And so that if somebody, this fund is collected in Northern Michigan, it stays in Northern Michigan to help our people, and which I thought was fair. And she agreed not to touch wells with this, because I told her there isn't anybody up here in a well who's gonna take it kindly to it when they all of a sudden get a water bill. Right. Are you kidding me? And so she took it all out. And so we went back and forth. And she even now needs my help on this, because there's even some division down within her own caucus. So I'm going to take a companion bill and we're going to get this through. And it's not ideal. There's a lot in it that I don't think is great, but they moved and they took us seriously. So that's sort of how things are working down there right now. And it's how things should work. And I'm kind of proud of some of those accomplishments myself, frankly. So it's not all perfect. It's not all perfect. And the last thing I'll bring up is something we were talking about today, that it's been something that I've been working with for most of my career. We started our film production company in the year 2000, which was a deeply divided year. I mean, remember the presidential election was decided by the Supreme Court, and it wasn't as hate-filled as things are today. But our goal, we started our company with the goal of saying that, look, there's got to be some things in this country that, as deeply divided as we are, we can all still celebrate together. And that's why we did films on Arlington Cemetery and Medal of Honor recipients and NASA and some of these other things. And I started working with a group whose whole mission was to rebuild a sense of grace and civility in this world. And the bottom line is, we've been talking, Betsy and I have been talking. The first person who called immediately after President Trump was shot, I mean, within 5 minutes of me finding out about it, was Betsy, saying we've got to make sure there's not political violence. And I don't know that this was even related to political violence, but the bottom line is, that's the call of our day. No matter how different we are. Betsy and I will never see eye to eye on abortion and on a number of issues, but we have got to rebuild this sense of grace and civility and not tolerate anything else coming up into this election, because it's kind of scary out there right now. So anyways, I think there's some good things that can happen, and I think we all need to be on guard as well. So.
Agree. Right.
Questions for either the senator or the representative? Yes, Commissioner Lautner.
Just a couple of quick, there was a lot of scuttlebutt about college funding that NMC is, do you have anything was something changed, or NMC college funding was reduced, or?
So thank you, Commissioner Lautner. After the governor had announced her, during the State of the State, she talked about free community college for all, right? And I immediately got contacted by NMC, which I'm a proud alum. Nick Nisley and Gabe Schneider, their legislative affairs person, reached out to me and pointed out that their understanding of the way the governor's proposal would work would actually take away some of the baseline funding that the college has to actually operate. And so I worked with Nick and President Nisley and Gabe. We got meetings with House Fiscal to kind of talk through the proposal, and what ended up coming out at the end does not impact NMC. Like, I was very specific. I worked with the community. It was tricky, right? Because there's a Michigan Community College Association, and I think there's 26 community colleges. Most of them have only in-district tuition, that's their bread and butter. And so the governor's proposal wouldn't have really affected them too much. So the majority of the Community College Association really weren't bothered, but I had one NMC and like 7 or 8 mostly rural colleges that it could really have negatively impacted. So we were able to advocate early enough on in the budget process that we were able to avoid that outcome. I appreciate you asking, and I will continue to watch that one really closely. But yeah, I think we were able to avoid that.
I think they
outcome.
still lose a little bit. I mean, that's one of the reasons I was opposed to the budget, but one thing I want to add to that is something really bad happened with NMC last year. And I'm on the capital outlay committee.
Mhm.
And the reason I voted yes on that whole budget last year was because of a $7 million project for NMC here. And we got this passed, and in the fall, this got caught up in politics. And I think I'm not going to point fingers at but this, all of a sudden, there was a supplemental bill that came through, and they replaced NMC with a couple of colleges downstate.
Mhm.
And I even went up to the chair of the committee saying, what are you doing? And I said, not only that, you didn't tell me you were going to do this. I had to find out from their lobbyist. And she said, oh no, was yours one of the school's cuts? I said, it sure was. And I said, and I negotiated in good faith with you on this. And they gave me their word. We'll see how much that values. We haven't met all year as a capital outlay committee, but she said, I give you my word, it will be in next year. So we'll see. I'm going to hold their feet to this, because that was really unconscionable to change it at the last minute, especially since I had been willing to help out with that. So NMC has gotten the short end of the stick, but they've also gotten some good things. I mean, they're part of the whole freshwater research innovation lab. We got them funding last year, which was a big deal for their aviation program.
Mhm.
And we're really advocating for them on a daily basis, because that's an important institution for
Very,
us.
yeah, for the whole region.
Yeah.
And then the name of the bill on the housing on state property,
There isn't a name yet because our offices are still finalizing before introduction. So there won't be a bill number until we actually do intro. And because we had talked about doing a double set with a House bill version and a Senate bill version, there will be 2 different, numbers.
in a nutshell, how would it work? Like, would the housing be owned by the state and rented to educators? Would they be allowed to buy?
We're still working out the details. The one in Glen Lake specifically is to take money or land that's already been allocated by the state and it's allowed to be used for a bunch of different purposes, just not housing, and to allow it to be used for housing. And there's a lot of creative solutions going on right now, because everywhere we go, we hear about this housing problem. I mean, it's the number one thing anybody's talking about. I don't know that the government can come in and solve it, but there's certain things we can do to help it. And so one of them being this project in Glen Lake. One, I've got a bill that statute has to be changed because the schools can't use money for funds. And I represent Beaver Island. Beaver Island is having a horrible time. They can't hire any teachers because they can't find a place to live. And so they don't need more money for their school facilities. They need teachers, which to get there, they need housing, which would be owned by the district. I've got a bill that will make that possible. We've changed a lot of MSHDA rules to make it easier, to increase the size of these projects. Betsy's downplaying. I'd love to take more credit for it, and I did advocate for it, but that housing that they just did with Grand Traverse County Schools and Interlochen and with the Catholic schools, that $5 million we got, that was really her baby. And that's going to make a big difference. So we're still spelling out the details on how Glen Lake could use this, but it's,
Quick question.
yeah.
Would it be just for educators, or what about our firemen, our police officers, our farmers?
I think we're open.
We're
I
open
mean,
to any
we're
of that
certainly
stuff. Yep.
open. I mean, I've met with our local
Okay.
fire chiefs,
Yeah.
right? Law enforcement. This is a massive problem that we're dealing with a lot of those like institutions that we rely on for public
This
safety
was one
education.
brought to us
But
by the
by the
schools.
schools.
So
And
if you've
so-
got one for let's go for it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what our job is. If you've got an idea for this for because they're having the same problems too.
But the
How it's
change-
going to work first.
Sure, but
Yeah.
Commissioner Lautner, the change that we're looking to would be changing state statute to expand usage to housing. So it's not limiting it to educators, but as the senator said, it was Glen Lake schools trying to get creative about a
Yeah.
real serious issue of 50% of them can retire in the next 5 years. That's a pretty, and to his point, like I don't believe that quote government can solve the problem of housing. We've talked about it before. We live in an incredibly blessed geography. People want to live here. People can afford to come here and buy cash sometimes, and this will continue to be an issue. So it's just, how do we find tools to put on the table? How do we do what we can with the resources that we have at the state level to try to come alongside communities as they grapple with these
And get
issues?
business or get government out of the way where need be. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a great cherry farmer who's building a whole complex to house his workers. I've got a business up near Petoskey that's investing because they can't fill their workforce. They're building a whole neighborhood to do this. And if there's things we can do to help, if you have projects like that in Leelanau County, let us know. We'll advocate it. Because what ends up happening is we won't know what we'll have to do the research to find out if there are legislative things or laws, standing in the way of these things, but we can work on that. So.
Thanks for the
I
question.
just have a quick question on process. The House Bill 40-12 is, the one that's really affecting my constituents.
Right.
in Leland Township. So do I rely on your office talking to Mr. Lewis, or do I rely on the local regional MDOT?
Well, if I can-
representative? Where do we start working on
So
it?
I wanted, Dakota, can you, and you may help with this, but we just talked about today, Dakota Baker, right? Stand up, sorry, right? Yeah,
That's-
look, he's been talking to MDOT, and a lot of this is gonna go through Michigan State Police. The short answer is, we're all trying to figure out how this works now. I mean, we got the overall thing, but he can interface with you, with them. He and I, and them, and all of us
My
can.
legislative director, Ashley, who I think we've talked to before.
Yeah,
But yeah, reach out to both of our offices
Yeah.
and we do our best to liaise and get you in touch with the right
Yeah.
folks within MDOT.
We're ready to.
Yeah.
Dakota was talking to Troy Hagan, who's our legislative
MDOT.
for MDOT, legislative liaison for MDOT, just today about this, because there's a lot of people with this question, so.
So let me just say very quickly that at our neighborhood association meeting, we already all filled out forms saying we wanted to lower our speed
Yeah.
limit by 5 miles an hour. So they're submitting them. Is this passed yet?
It's past the house,
That
yep.
was a Bradley. I talked about that one when I was here, I want to say in the fall.
Well, wait, it
The
passed the
Brad-
Senate too.
Did it pass
But
the
it hasn't
Senate
been
too?
signed in the law. has it?
Okay.
Oh, it has been signed.
Oh, it has been signed in law, good. It's funny, because, yeah,
Our association's already submitted.
you're good, yep, good.
As I say this in here, it goes through the road commission, not through the county commission. If I read this correctly.
We're gonna have to find out
Let's-
on
yeah,
all these,
let's-
because everybody's giving us different things, but what you've just witnessed is a flaw that I have. And I don't know if you have the same thing. Once something leaves my chamber, I forget all about it. I just assume it's law.
Unless
And
it's my bill, then I
Yeah.
know. If it became law, I know.
well, that's for sure. But even then, early on, I'll tell a short story, was just started in the House. And there was, a lot of times bills that didn't pass last session, they'll try to get new people to run it. And this was a whole series of bills decriminalizing little things. And somebody came and said, John, do you want to take one of these? And it was make it so it wasn't a crime if you forgot to write your name on a piece of ice fishing equipment. So I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, that sounds great. So we testify it, we pass it, all this stuff. A year and a half later, I get a call from the governor's office. Hey, John, they're signing your bill in the law tomorrow. Just thought you'd like to know. I said, what bill? Your fishing bill. What fishing bill? And they said, your ice fishing bill. I said, are you kidding me? That a year and a half later, and it's just now getting signed. I mean, this is just how it works. So
But did you get a
Yep.
pen? Did she?
not
get
for
a
that
pen?
one. No,
Okay.
no. Like, it's
You get the
great.
pen that she
I
signed
feel
for.
that's my first official bill signed in law too. It's kind of regret it.
I'd like to ask about 4722, which was originally the short-term rental
Mhm.
that the state wanted to take over, but it passed the House in 2021. We like to keep the short-term rentals local.
Yeah.
Now, what I spent on that, that was, you can make a lot of friends and a lot of enemies
Oh, yeah.
sitting on a township board.
Yeah.
We had like 3% or 4%, and I believe the state looked at 30%. That would change the whole face of Leelanau
Right.
County. Okay, and also the more short-term rentals, you got the less houses that are. So, I just, from the two districts that I represent, I would like to leave it local control.
I agree.
Thank you.
Well, and I can offer Commissioner O'Rourke, those bills, to my knowledge, have not come back up.
I've
Has
heard
anybody
ru-
reintroduced?
No, but I've heard rumors
I mean,
that
there's
it's
been
still
rumors.
alive.
Well,
And-
yeah.
I have a long history with, so as a new legislator, I thought, okay, this thing was the top priority of the Speaker of the House last term. And so they introduced this thing that was just plain awful. I mean, it was devastating. Yeah. And you know that. And then I introduced the opposite, saying that Lansing could have basically no control over it. And that just got thrown away. So we got it to version 11 and they made some concessions and then brought me in and said, John, we gave you a lot of concessions. They brought it down to the one I was really lobbying to was so that some rich guy from downstate can't buy a whole neighborhood. So you could limit it to a person owning 2. And they said, that means you're a yes. And I'm like, gosh, they're right. I did negotiate on this. So I actually voted yes. And it's the worst thing I've ever done. I mean, I hate, well, so no, but it is. But even then, because we got it to version 11. And when that's sort of how it works. If you're negotiating, it'd be so easy to vote no. But I immediately went that night to Wayne Schmidt saying, Wayne, this will never pass the Senate, right? And he said, no. And I talked to the governor's liaison, don't worry, she's never going to sign this into law. But what I learned the hard way was nobody gets to see what happens behind the scenes in Lansing. So I am, to know all the discussions, and Jack O'Malley and I kept it off the board for 6 solid weeks. It kept going up, trying to kill this thing. But nobody saw this. So I will never touch this again as long as I live. And
I'm a no.
No, I mean, I will be a hard no on it. I just think it's unconscionable for the reasons I said before there. We were in a housing panel together. And one thing that dawned on me, I will say this, is if you were a visitor from an outer space and came to a meeting like this and heard about the terrible problems we have with housing, and then somehow got in a car and drove around, this was in February, drove around and saw that 75% of the houses were dark and there was no one living in there, you'd say, what's wrong with these people? I mean, we have to solve this housing crisis, really start to wrestle with what are our priorities here. So, but I can promise you, I will run with, if anybody ever asked me to say yes to something like that. So again,
Well, there's another bill, 5438 Regulation Act that deals with penalties and taxes and, liability insurance and things like that. It's, if you get part of it, you're probably gonna get the other part. So I would just look into that. Just please look into that.
Sure.
Representative Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Yep.
I'll give you my quick update to both of you. Thank you very much. First of all, vehicle sales and such as that, it is estimated that by the end of the week, all the vehicles will be gone. The file cabinets drove off tonight, so they're out of here. So they're going. I believe Lauren used to be a used car salesperson. I know her life somewhere. That's all I can tell you. So thank you for your work on that. In your email, you've got a copy from Gail.
The boat.
Huh? The boat's going to.
Boat's going to?
Oh, boat's
It's gonna be gone by Friday.
It'll be done by Friday.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And more than what we started. So you are. Planning Commission, you got a copy of the Planning Commission 2023 annual report. I just want to let folks know that it's out there. It's also on the website. So if you want to see the report. We have posted 2 positions, one for the Assistant Finance Director and the other one for the Human Resources Director. We have already had resumes submitted, so hopefully we're going to be able to get those moving right along. And just so the public knows, whether they know it or not, Kathy was appointed as the Finance Director by myself last week. So her official start date was Monday. And I wasn't here, so she couldn't yell at me yesterday. So that was good. So those are my quickies.
Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations, Kathy, and thank you. We are now down in our agenda to our first public comment opportunity. You have 3 minutes to talk to us about anything that's on the agenda. The senator and the representative talked about a lot of things, so that gives you a lot of opportunity. Please come forward, raise your hand, we'll call you. Yes, Keith Ashley.
Keith Ashley, Leland Township. I just want to thank you for inviting the senator and the representative here. That was extremely enlightening. It's a first for me to hear civil words between opposing parties. And it was comforting to know that that takes place at the state level and that things actually do get done in a bipartisan fashion as it should. And so I only have one suggestion, and that would be to invite them back, perhaps biannually, but certainly annually, and allow them to give us an update. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please, ma'am.
I'm Patty Lesh from Northport, Leelanau Township. Since I was rightfully chastised for speaking out of sequence last time I came to this table, I figured I'd better review the packet information before coming to speak about my concern. I reviewed the handouts regarding the telecommunications tower in Leelanau Township, and I see that that is an action item. And I wanted to be better informed on the topic. So I made a phone call to a trusted representative of our township. And this person gave me some concerns and some history on what has been happening here. The decision to move forward was done without applying for a special use permit, which thwarted any public comments before the county spent $400,000. The second one was the county claims were acting on a resolution passed by the township, but the township resolution was mainly focused on improving broadband post pandemic. And then 3, the site is supposedly the best coverage site, but no study was done to determine if that's the most economical site. And number 4 is to date, they don't have a written commitment from a provider. The concern is that we spend taxpayer money for another empty tower as we have on the county campus. This is just another example of how local government officials who are supposed to be working for us continues to act impulsively without doing their research and doing what appears to be nefarious practices to move ahead on projects, keeping the public from engaging in the conversation and spending the people's money without their permission or knowledge. If we don't stand up like me, nothing will change. I read the packets today and it changed my mind. I'm ready. You know, I came here under the protocols and I learned something. And I hope when you review this portion of the information or whatever the tower information that you guys are going to be addressing today, that I hope that you have learned something from the broadband and from other projects that you have done, that you've rushed into them, have not dotted your I's and crossed your T's and looked to see what the obstacles could be. So I just, you know, it's like, I feel as though it's like giving my money to my parents to hold for me, but then finding out that they're using my money to purchase their addiction of choice. So and that offends me.
Thank you very much. Other public comment? Yes, Steve.
Good evening. I'm Steve Steyer, Empire Township. I'm here representing the Leelanau County Historic Preservation Society. We are the Poor Farm Barn people. And because I want to invite everybody, including the audience, to a showing of our documentary that we released earlier this year at the Bay Theater on August 4th. So watch your news resources and attend that local showing of our documentary that was actually paid for by a grant from Rotary Charities and a matching grant from Michigan Humanities. Because we're restricted from having people inside the barn, we've turned our attention to doing some programming outside. on the site. And during this past summer, we have planned and implemented 3 outdoor educational activities at the Poor Farm site. First, an archaeology day for students that we did in May. We invited students from the county. We started out with high school students, but we ended up with people as young as 10 years old that had a great time that day. And we had 2 professional archaeologists there to train and help mentor the kids. They had a great time digging in the dirt. The purpose was that we wanted to find out where 2 of the original residences were on that site, and we did find where those residences were. The second is a basic composting demonstration with has 3 bins and a large instructive graphic sign. This is a partnership project with Leelanau County Solid Waste, the Park Commission, Row by Row, and us. Row by Row is the volunteer gardeners at the site. You've all driven past and seen the nice garden out there. Waste and dry leaves are the basic ingredients that make up the compost, and it needs weekly turning and attention there, and the people at Row by Row have done that. The third is an outdoor educational exhibit that is a planting of the 3 sisters in the Row by Row garden. This illustrates the Native American practice of growing corn, beans, and squash together in close proximity to each other, where the corn stalk supports the climbing of the beans and the large leaves of the squash shade the earth and conserve water. We're having a professional designed and printed signage that will explain the 3 sisters.
Steve, your time was up and you didn't ask us to approve your grant, which is why I allowed you to speak as your beginning public
All right.
comment. But stay around and finish your story at the end.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Your time's up, I have to.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, sir.
Item 4C on the agenda is energy, and I recently came across some information on energy that I want to share with you.
Where's the one?
Don Spinnick, Leland Township, and like I said, this is some information that I just recently came across. Full disclosure, I have not read it cover to cover myself, but I know that you get lots of stuff in your packets, lots of information to go through. And I understand there is some time between now and the early fall on the solar panel grant thing, which falls under energy. So I just wanted to share this all with you as something that you could look at as you deliberate on energy policy and items here in the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I was out there the same presentation Don was at. But I got another brochure to share.
Okay, thank you.
Your test, yeah.
I'm Harry Stebbins. In the interest of fairness, I know this board is famous for listening to both sides of an issue. So I've heard a whole lot about why we should put solar panels. I hadn't heard a whole lot about why we shouldn't. And then this group, this Mackinac Center, they had a lot of really good reasons why we shouldn't do it. So all I want to do is just have, if you would just turn to page 5 at the right-hand side, right-hand column, the bottom of the first paragraph. I just want to point out that solar panels create 300 times more toxic waste per unit of energy than do nuclear power plants. I didn't know that. I don't know if you know it, but anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Please look this booklet over and consider it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Stebbins.
Thanks, Ed.
Anybody else? Yes. Another North Fork resident.
Yes, I am.
Come on, Ms. Whitman.
As I told Ty, he has always graciously welcomed me to these hearings. My name is Alexis Whitman and I live in Northport. I get to the right page. We had a presentation from Mackinac Center. Mackinac Center. Now you got me flustered. And Mr. Hayes, John Hayes, came to represent them. They are a non-political organization. They do everything from the basis of a free market approach rather than a controlled market approach. And so it's interesting to think in terms of how free market might govern energy versus a controlled and subsidized market controls energy. And for instance, Tesla rebates being given to very wealthy people while I drive a 24-year-old Toyota and subsidize it with my taxes. So that's a kind of distribution of income that goes towards a goal set from high above. And where a market exists at the local level as well as at scaled up levels. The analogy he gave is that we're dealing with a system of energy that's not, alternative energy is not very efficient. Nuclear energy works at a capacity of 96% efficiency, whereas wind is 18% and solar is like 6% in terms of real capacity to provide energy in a reliable way. And you still have to provide backup because you can't count on those 100% for reliability. So you have to provide a backup system because the demand is just going to continue to grow with data centers, with AI, needs for power, for the industry that we'll have when we make America great again back in our country. We're going to have huge energy demands. And solar is like a fashion item. It's like fancy sunglasses that you put on when you want to look stylish. But in terms of really solving the problem for our country with energy, it is not fair money. It makes it more expensive for regular energy to provide because they have difficulty competing against the subsidies. If you had a baseball team like the Pittsburghers and you had one guy who was kind of unreliable, he'd show up once in a while, he wouldn't come to practice, but he had fancy Nike sneakers and really great protein bars. But you had another whole crew of people who were putting out day in, day out, making runs and hits. Are you going to want to put that guy in the team, as fancy as he is, when you've got to produce a game and win? So that's my urge. I would urge you have the same presentation because it's very enlightening with life cycle costs as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to make public?
I'd like to say a little something.
Okay.
Hi there, my name is Scott Perry from District 2, Elmwood Township. I guess I'd like to continue the baseball analogy, but on the other side of the consideration where I think as governors, you should hit the pitch that you're thrown. In this case, we have budget allocated from the federal government that would retain taxpayer dollars here locally at the clip of an estimated $40,000 per year. And I think your job is to do the best you can with the cards you're dealt, and you should actually vote yes on the solar panel.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Before we turn to our action agenda items, I'd like to take a 5-minute break so we can shake the hands of our senator who has to leave, I believe, and our representative. We will reconvene in 5 minutes.
You were there.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. When you give us a mic.
You don't behave, you gotta go on the timeout.
Is that what the timeout room is? Can I just go in the timeout room anyway?
Right, good idea.
Make sure your microphones are on. Are you ready, Jen?
Ready.
Okay, thank you. We are now down to the consent agenda items. The consent agenda are those items that we discussed at last Tuesday's executive committee, and we're all in agreement to move them forward. They can be removed if any commissioner wants to have them removed and talked about separately. Looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved 6-0. We are now down to the action item number 1. Mr. Lewis?
Item number 1, I brought this up last week as it relates to the tower. As you know, that I'll re-explain it again, is that up in Leelanau Township, they started the public hearing a little over a month ago. They adjourned it. There was a planner that been hired by some of the folks who aren't necessarily in favor of the tower to do an evaluation of our special land use permit application. And after that, we haven't heard anything more, but after that, I started trying to reach out to hire a planner to review our application, to review the comments that were made, or the documents made, because I wanted, for us as a county, we owe it to make sure we have provided the best information we can for that special land use permit, at least as to do that. As I thought about this over the weekend, if I could redo something, I would have done this before we submitted the application, because we put everything together the best we knew how to do it. But felt that we had put a professional planner in there that was going to go to school for to make sure we covered, crossed our T's and W's with our I's. You can see the basic scope of work that we're requesting. We're looking for an honest review. If there's something we need to correct, we need to look at, and we want to do that. As I shared with a couple on Friday, there may be side items that that their individual, maybe you're right, we need to correct. So the reason why it's here is because there's a question mark whether this is something that I could have done under the spending authority, and I think something will correct later on in the year. But anything under $10,000 was the intent, that I would just be able to go and do that as long as I let you know about it. But instead of worrying about it, we just asked you to give this approval tonight so that I can put, these people are already kind of going to work based upon good faith in my relationship with them in the past. So hopefully we'll have it done by the end of the week, by the end of the month, that we can submit that to the township. Darrell will also know what we need to do. You'll get a copy of the full report. So, okay, explain as quickly as I can.
Commissioner Rush?
I move to recommend that the County Board of Commissioners approves the proposal for professional planning services for Progressive AE for review of the Leland Township Tower Special Land Use Permit application as outlined in the proposal dated July 8, 2024, and authorizes the county administrator to execute the proposal with funds not to exceed $5,300 to come from the special project fund.
That's going to come from now. That's out in the
Move to recommend,
communications tower fund.
this is tonight, right?
Oh,
You
okay.
move, you didn't move to recommend.
No, I'm good. Sorry.
And is there a second?
Second.
Now you wanna,
It's okay. It's going to be coming out of communications tower fund. So that was we thought it needed to go this way, but see, it's good to know what here yesterday. They corrected it.
are you willing to change your motion?
Please, I move and it's communication funds. Thank you.
Commissioner Lautner?
So then it sounds like I can thank the clerk's office for this motion instead of the way it was worded when I first read this, which was the professional services at an hourly rate not to exceed $5,000. So just how it read, and an estimated $300 for expenses. So
their fee could come in under 5,000, but we put a cap. That's what
and I
this
see
is.
that it says not to exceed, so I hope it does come in less. I think that that's the way it must. Yes, but We know what their hourly rate is, since it's not 5,000.
I think it's in their proposal that was in your packet. I think it's right around
300.
$300 an hour.
I think
So
I
that
saw
was the,
It's $300 an hour.
Okay. 300 an hour, okay.
Any other questions?
I saw that in their expenses, but.
The expenses are not gonna exceed $300.
Right.
So I want to make sure all that got put in there too, so their expenses will not exceed $300.
So, do we have more than just this one sheet from them?
But this covers everything, no, it should be. This basically covers everything. And there is other stuff like there's other things like, their workers, their scope of work and their fees are right here. There's more to be signed. I guess the signature page didn't get put in there, so I apologize. I didn't get that in, so.
Did you get your question answered?
Well, not really, and I'm sorry, I just don't know how I missed that, because I don't see where it says $300.
It's down at the very bottom of that page, ma'am. It said, and an estimated reimbursable expenses of $300 to be invoiced according to the tax schedule.
That's not an hourly rate.
That's not an hourly rate.
Huh?
No, that's not
That's
the
not an
hourly
hourly
rate, that's the reimbursable expenses of $300, which makes.
No,
it
that's not
$5,000.
part of the hourly, no. I put the entire amount in there. We're not gonna spend more than $5,300, period.
I understand it, and hopefully up to, I just did not know what their hourly rate was.
Okay, it was $300 an hour. Yes, yes, ma'am.
So the motion really should read reimbursable expense of $300 per hour to be invoiced.
No, they're not going to spend more than $300, 500. They're not gonna spend more than $5,000 of their professional.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the clerk's motion.
Yeah, this is the motion almost what I wanted to do, so it's fine.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Yes,
and then I wanna make sure,
whichever. It's
following
good.
exactly what we did before, I wanna make sure the expenses get included in there, so when the invoice comes in, there's an expense, well, we didn't approve that, well, you have to approve the expenses to go along with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion. Any other questions? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved, 6-0. Phew, we got through that one. We now are down to the MERS delegate.
Okay, you have, two delegates, one is recommended that Armanda Krantz, did I say that correctly, Krantz? Be employee delegate, and Michelle Crocker serve as the officer delegate. She has to be served because there's two of us that said, no, we don't want to go, period. One of them was me, so I didn't need to go, and the other one was Kathy. She says, I don't need to go either, so we'll let Michelle go, but if someone else comes along and really wants to, we'll let them take it too. So right now, these are the two delegates that are authorized to attend, so that we recommended to you. And the other one, on Amanda, they were selected by their peers.
Commissioner Rexroth.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners recommend that Armanda Krantz serve as the employee delegate, and Michelle Crocker, county clerk, serves as the officer delegate at the 78th Annual MERS Conference on October 10th, 11th, 2024 at the Amway Grand Plaza in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm reading that verbatim. I move that we recommend. I didn't recommend that we move, so make sure that we have this.
Where do you want to go?
I don't want to go. I just read what was written down here. I think that's.
You know, that's kind of interesting because I had the county clerk help me with those tonight.
Yes.
But I'm gonna have to let her know that it's not recommend.
Well, yeah, there was I moved correctly, but.
You're so.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Was this motion seconded?
It was.
Yes, by over.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, 6-0. We now down to our 2% grant approval acceptance process. And I cut Mr. Steyer off before he could tell us in his public comment that the reason he was making public comment, he was urging us to support the 2% grant for the Port Barn project.
Good. As shared with you last week, out of the 4 applications that were submitted, 3 of them have been approved, 4 have been approved by the band for funding. So we need to accept those grants or when the check is here, so we can make the deposit. One was $50,000 to Housing North for the rental preservation program. Another one was $15,000 to Inland Seas Education Association for the retrofit of the Township Alliance. And then the last one was $3,680 to Leelanau County Historical Preservation Society for the educational exhibits at the Fort Farm.
Commissioner O'Dea.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners accept the 2% grant awards from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians as listed by our Administrator Richard Lewis and enter into agreements with Housing North, Inland Seas Education Association, and Leelanau County Historical Preservation Society in order to disperse the funds for the approved projects.
Discussion.
Yes, I recommend that we move forward with this. So,
Very good there.
Any other discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
aye.
Motion approved, 6-0.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Oh, you have to vote on the actual motion, right?
We're now down to the next one, E911.
Okay, sometime back, you approved this whole, you approved the entire plan as it relates to the, I forgot what this is here, the Leelanau County 911 service plan. But your motion down at one point, talked about having to go to the public hearing, and it made it kind of fuzzy that, okay, you really haven't given final approval until after the public hearing. Public hearing has been held, there were no comments, there's been no change. So this motion here is now giving the final approval for this plan, so it can be enacted.
Commissioner Rexroth.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve the Leelanau County Resolution number 2024-013, the E911 Service Plan Adoption Resolution.
Support.
All those in support, it's a roll call. Yep. Great, please.
Commissioner Rexroth,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Chairman Wessel,
Yes.
Commissioner Alguier,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner. Yes. Commissioner O'Rourke,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. We now down to action item number 5. Commissioner Kramer served on the Beta Board, the Senior Services Advisory Group, and the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. And I put on a memo that's in front of you, the rules from our board rules. Subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners and based on received requests from commissioners, I appoint Commissioner Alguier to the Beta Board, Commissioner Ross to the Senior Services Advisory, and Commissioner Lautner, if she's willing, to the Substance Abuse Prevention.
And I meant to ask, when do they meet? What is, do they have a schedule?
Substance Abuse Advisory meets every other month. And I have forgotten the date.
It's a Tuesday.
And you, Commissioner O'Rourke, you serve on it as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that changes.
Oh,
things.
that one.
It's a local, it's a Leland County one.
Okay, wait a minute. We're talking about different ones.
Yeah, I would question that too.
So I'm,
Yes,
I stand, I will be corrected.
There's, yes.
Could I have, yes, Commissioner Rexroth?
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners appoint the following committee assignments as presented. Bay Area Transportation Authority, Commissioner Alguier, Senior Services Advisory, Commissioner Ross, Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, Commissioner Lautner.
Support.
Any discussion? All of those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, 6-0. We now have an MMP. Okay.
You approved moving forward with the MMP. We did a resolution and we submitted all the documents, but the state didn't like the way we did the resolution. So we need to redo the resolution. And of course, we also got to do some, Grand Traverse County's got to get a couple more things. So we're not the only one that got to cross a few more T's and I's. So this resolution we have offered to here as well as what's on there is what would make the state of Michigan happy.
Commissioner Lautner?
Yes, I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve the interlocal agreement between County of Grand Traverse, County of Benzie, and County of Leelanau. The notice of intent submission to the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or known as EAGLE, and accept the county's approved agency CAA responsibilities.
Support.
Any discussion? Will they want us to do a roll call on this or just a vote?
Do a roll call, be on the safe side on that. Sorry about that, Jerry. That's good.
That's all right, I'm prepared. Commissioner Lumber,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Rexroad,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Chairman Wessel,
Yes.
Commissioner Elder,
Yes.
6-0.
We're now down to your item number 6.
Just a couple of follow-ups from last week. One, in your, before you is a budget schedule. You know, that's something you asked for to make sure we get that clarified. So we have it lined up. Thank you, Kathy, for putting that together. So, you know, you wanted that, and so there is, you don't have to be anything if this is what you wanted. The second question was still dealing with the stipends. It's continuing to think about it, talk with Kathy. Based upon that, we may be getting some applications, and giving that to her and an assistant quick soon enough. Give that individual time to get on board, so we have that dual control part covered. I'm gonna stick with the plan that we will end the stipends of the date of when we present the budget to you in September. So that'll be on your general meeting that you will have. Now, we're not gonna have a long discussion, but I still feel like we'll have everything completed that we need to be complete, that the stipends will no longer be required. So that is the plan. I gave us the thought. And if we can do it sooner, we'll let you know, we'll keep you informed. But the dual control is the thing that we really want to get put into place. Because, you know, we still need that, but if we can get someone hired within the next month, give it enough time to get it up here to speed with us, you know, maybe we should be able to meet that plan date without problem. So that's all. This is updated. You don't have to take any action, but that what was requested of me last week. We'll continue to move forward. So thank you. Okay.
Any questions for the administrator?
And I am still working on another job description, so that'll be coming to you next month. So.
If you have feedback on the schedule, talk to Mr. Lewis about it.
One thing that I didn't realize is that, you know, I thought I would have an extra week in October. No, y'all want to meet the first Tuesday in October, not the second. It's all been set in your schedule, but we will make it work nice.
All right, then let us down.
I will not let you down to the best of my ability.
Okay, that takes us down to review of financials. Thank you, Kathy, for responding to my one question. Any questions for Kathy?
Well, I had a question in late. There were two different indigent defense fund attorneys that have submitted bills from way back.
Yes.
So I know we have a policy that we have to have those quarterly. Does that policy apply to our vendors?
I am not aware that that would apply to these vendors. These cases, I did look at the invoices. Some of these are felonies, and they are long-term ongoing from starting in 2023.
Yeah.
Paul Jarbo has requested that they submit more timely, quarterly.
Right.
And because this was a lot to dump on us this week.
Well, exactly, that was my concern. Number one, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Number two is some of these are back in 23, and we've already closed our books.
Well, the grant is October first of 23 through September 24. So the grant that funds this indigent defense runs on a different fiscal year than we do.
So the policy we did quarterly was to help us with our budgeting process, so we didn't get hit with, what we call this time basically was Christmas bonuses that
Sure.
would happen.
And-
Like, we got dumped on in December, we would think our budgets were okay, and then boom. I would think that this would be helpful also to the courts to have them quarterly, so if Judge Jarbo, Jarbo gets them in quarterly, you know, that would help a lot.
And then they submit for reimbursement to the state.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you for that.
Mhm.
That was it for me.
Any other questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Any special reports by staff, commissioners, or agencies? Commissioner O'Hare?
I attended the NMCA Northern Michigan Commissioners Association on Monday in Roscommon. And we had roundtable discussions, one on jails. Jails are an expensive issue for many, many, many counties. And all are struggling with how to fill them and fund them.
I don't think someone else.
And yes, everyone needs juvenile beds, so there's this.
Yeah, I just lost me, I'm sorry. Okay. Advertise for that to fill the jails, or how do we do it?
Well, I said, that's good news, but it's expensive.
Well, we heard tonight about the housing issues and the food cost issues, and it's not cheaper over there, so.
But it's expensive, and everyone's trying to figure out.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's very.
You know, I think we are one of the most affordable jail rental prices, are we not?
The problem is everybody wants to rent out their beds. Everybody's trying to get people to send.
It's like, that's exactly what I said would happen if we built this big jail.
Right.
Yeah. He knows I said that. Prove me right. Love it.
We also talked about, the impact of four-year terms on everyone. Oh, yes, I always sit back, don't I? I'm sorry, I apologize. Anyway, it was it's always a very interesting meeting.
I forget.
And it's valuable. We compare ideas, we share things that have worked and things that have not worked. So I'm very glad that we have, that I'm able to attend this year.
Thank you for representing us there. Thank you. Any other agency or commissioner reports? A note from the health board, we have our health board meeting on the 30th of July in this room at 2:00. If anybody wants to attend, we are moving forward and finding a new health officer. So the agenda will be talking about that process.
Are you sure it's in this room?
It may be downstairs.
Yeah, okay.
It's
I just was-
in this
Early
building.
voting was shouting
In
at
this
me.
building, yes.
Okay, in the building. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, we are now down to our second public comment. And we'd be happy to hear from anybody that would like to speak. Yes, Steve.
Good evening. Jail cost county taxpayers $100 per day per bed. That's what we built. take that number times all the empty beds we've had for years, and we're into the millions of dollars that our taxpayers are being overtaxed for. We had a presentation of some kind here today about housing for education. Why don't we do it for everybody? Let's open up state land for everybody to build where they want. Why screw around? Where's the thinking on our politicians' part to do this right? And on solar energy, I don't recall that the people of this county or the electors petitioned for solar energy. No, I guess if the proponents can convince the commissioners that it'll be forced upon them and they'll be forced to pay for it in grant monies, then I guess it's okay. We can have clear consciences. In another manner, we hope that the maintenance issue is resolved by a complete report. And I believe is necessary. The report would be identified as a need, necessity, justification, and benefit report. Until that's done, we should not proceed with playing around, doing things in advance before we get things figured out. The senior services report, I looked at it and I can't find any financial data in that senior services report that was given last Tuesday. I was looking for revenue and spending, and it's absent. But I guess it's okay for the commissioners. You just nod your heads to a new additional tax millage without questioning how the spending is done. Finally, on number 7 item on the agenda, we talked about this asking for an apology by this commission at our meeting on the 18th, commission meeting on the 18th. We were looking forward to some type of resolution tonight that would specify an apology to the clerk and to the taxpayers. We're sorry that you have not chosen to do that. We believe that it is necessary. Here's what I heard last week. Let's get to what I think is the elephant in the room. It's nobody's fault. It's just where we are today. First of all, let's say it outright. It's not what took place 3 years ago, it's how. The process of bringing it in here sucked. Sucked. I'm just saying it. It was just not done in a proper manner. It burdens us. It stays, and it stayed with us for a long time. Get rid of it. Own it. It happened. Now that to me indicates an apology is required. Now I recall only one person in public office that I've attended over 2,000 meetings that apologized for something. That was Commissioner Jean Witkowski. About 20 years ago, apologized for something she voted for. But I know when we have such omniscience and omnipotence, we're probably unable to do that. But I strongly request that this apology take place, because I think most people will recognize what we recognize, that we disagree with Commissioner Lewis, that there's no fault. There has to have been some kind of fault to have this gone for over 3 years and wasting almost $1 million to date. Again, should this commission choose not to apologize, it would appear they are unfit to serve in public office, particularly when there's election this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any other public comment? Mr. Asher?
Keith Ashley, Leland Township. I couldn't hear everything that Mr. Mikowski said, but I do agree that the amount of money that was spent on not getting a new administrator is an incredible amount of money that has, to my mind and others, has been wasted. But I'll deal with some money that's a much lesser amount. Commissioner Lautner mentioned about Christmas bonus. And I like to be Scrooge, so I'll play Scrooge. And this is not, I know, a dialogue, but I'll ask the questions and hopefully I'll get some answers at a point in time. Is there a total amount of money that's set aside for Christmas bonuses? And I presume that that's for the employees, not for you all. Is it performance-based and based on exceeding objectives that have been set for each department? Are there dollar limits on each person's receiving the same? And does everybody get a bonus? So I hope I can get answers. Thank you.
I'm sure you will during commission comment. Any other public comment? Yes, Jackie.
Hello, my name is Jackie Anderson. I'm a Bingham Township resident and chair of the Aging Well and Leelanau Committee. I'm here tonight to ask each commissioner to speak publicly in support of the Leelanau County Senior Services millage renewal. As an occupational therapist working in both long-term care and home health care for nearly 25 years, 20 of those being in Leelanau County, I've witnessed firsthand the benefits of this program. The current cost for in-home care assistance in Leelanau County exceeds $35 an hour. For seniors who cannot afford this, the programs and assistance provided by Leelanau County Senior Services is vital to their independence. Programs like financial assistance, food assistance, program connections, social gatherings, health and wellness education are all necessary for our most vulnerable seniors. I'm asking for support from all the commissioners to help ensure that this program can continue. Please include statements of support for millage renewal during conversations that you have with voters in the coming, what do we got, 3 weeks? I know that this millage has been previously approved with generous majority support of the voters. However, we should never take for granted that that will always remain that way. We must continue to educate the people who live in this community about the benefits of the program and the importance of this millage renewal. I assure you that each and every one of you have constituents in your district who benefit from these programs, and the loss of the program would have devastating consequences for them, leaving hundreds of seniors in our community without services to remain in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Any other public comments? Thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for those of you that spoke to us. Commissioner Lautner, Commissioner comment?
Yes, please. And I did, was reminded of something. I think we were told we had need assessments by Lena of 200 and some for from January till June or whatever. But I think that was not the correct number. Someone told me that. Do you know what the number was? Who's on senior? Jamie. Okay. So
Well, I am too.
oh, yeah, so the need assessment was not 200 and some. Do you know what it was?
I really frankly don't know what you're.
Okay.
What issue you're.
It was a number that Lena spoke about just for the assessment. Yes, so we had to implement a policy some years ago because we have some reimbursable expenses to employees, such as like we would have a department head that would travel. So there would be a mileage that this person would be entitled to reimburse for. And what would happen is that said employee would wait from January and save all those up until December and ask for this reimbursement that was an entire reimbursement. And this was just one particular employee, but there's many situations where there are these reimbursable expenses, or they're not even reimbursable, they're just mileage is reimbursable, et cetera. Or but per diems could pile up, et cetera. So what would happen is the employees would wait until December and turn those in and use it as their own Christmas bonus. So come November, we are looking at budget, and our budgets are much more elevated than they ought to be at that time, because we don't know what expenses are out there. So all of a sudden come December, these would be turned in and created budgeting problems. It also created a real problem of accountability, because who could remember in December whether we had had an employee go to Gaylord in February or Grand Rapids in March? Nope, it was beyond what anybody could keep track of. So we implemented a quarterly, all these things must be turned in quarterly so that we can much easier track our budget. So that was the end of the Christmas bonuses. Other than that, we have no bonuses, period. County government, to my understanding, is not allowed to do that. We don't do that here. So. I'm sorry.
Well, I was hoping.
It would have been merit-based anyway.
Any other commissioner comments? Yes, Commissioner Elgar.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, if you noticed, I was kind of trailing off on my last comment. Like, what was the second thing we talked about? We talked about housing also. And as our senator or representative mentioned, that is a universal issue. So I am really heartened that they are taking it as seriously as they verbalized, because we all need help with housing. Just so you know, we spent a little time with Jerry Coleman today. A couple of us just investigating the idea of applying for a tribal grant in the fall to put some level 2 chargers here. And just totally preliminary, but talking about it, if we could get a tribal grant to do that. There's a wonderful spot on the far side of the parking lot that would not interfere with anything, so that's a possibility. Then in the future, we could have a plug-in hybrid for senior services, for instance, or an EV and save gas money. It'd be wonderful, but it would also, you can also charge for this, and it can become an income stream and a lifesaver for visitors to our county who are desperate for a charge, because we do not have chargers up here. I would also, regarding our citizens in District 1, I expressed last week that I was concerned that they would remain unrepresented for 6 months. My brother lives in District 1. I'm there a lot. If anyone in District 1 needs assistance or needs to make a phone call or whatever, I would love to hear from them. We don't want them completely unrepresented until the election.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner O'Rourke.
Yes, sir, the HR position, just a question, now, Mr. Lewis, I have the utmost confidence in Mr. Lewis. Is that just a one-on-one, the application comes in and you hire that person, or long before you came, we had a thing called a personnel committee, which and a finance committee. Then we were said, okay, at a direction for it. So basically, I just like to know what our policy is. And also to disband the personnel committee and the finance committee.
Anyone that, any application I have working with HR, I'm gonna have a group of employees interviewing and try to make sure we get the best one, and I may even bring in a couple of HR folks.
Okay.
That I know that are in the public sector to assist in that, so we can make sure we're asking the right questions. No, I won't make that decision. I'm the final
Yes,
person,
I understand.
but I'll have a number of people provided the input, you know, that's.
Thank you.
That's been my style every time, from way back when, so.
I recognize that.
We will put the personnel and the finance committee issue on the August agenda and make a final decision on that. Any other commissioner comment? Okay,
Finance or what?
Personnel. Yeah.
Kathy? We now have approval of financials. Anything you want to kick us off with?
No, you can tackle them as
Cover the fund.
the fund transfers. Yeah, we're just going to be making sure that we can make our payment in September for the Radiocom project. I think we have 3 years left. 2, might be 2 after this payment. So, and now that revenues are coming in, collection has started September, July 1st, sorry, wrong month, July 1st. So the county revenue stream will start statutorily. I think the first disbursement to the county was going to be this week. So the treasurer will start receipting our revenue in, which is good, because we kind of go, you know, our reserves go down as June approaches, and then we start back up again. So.
I move to approve fiscal year 2024 fund transfer number 24-003.
Support.
All those for that motion say aye. Aye. Motion approved, 6-0.
And move to approve claims and accounts $366,813.38.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
approved, 6-0.
I move to approve post out of $1,826,408.69. Support.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.